Have you ever been so publicly humiliated that your hands trembled and your voice failed you while everyone watched? Have you felt the crushing weight of shame so heavy it threatened to break something sacred inside you? Today's story plunges into that brutal moment when faith collides with cruelty, when principle meets power, and when one woman's quiet courage transforms into something far more profound than anyone could imagine. This is about humiliation, yes, but also about a grace so unexpected it changes everything, a forgiveness so powerful it defies every instinct for revenge, and a redemption that arrives when we least deserve it and most desperately need it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like anxious insects. Miriam Wade stood at the edge of the conference room, fingers white-knuckled around a manila folder labeled Company Policy Revision Draft. 27 years old, she wore her standard work uniform, a navy blue dress with modest grey sleeves that reached her wrists, sensible flats that never clicked too loudly on the office floors, and her grandmother's silver cross on a delicate chain around her neck. The cross caught the light occasionally, a small persistent gleam that some colleagues found endearing and others found irritating. She had been with Brennan Sterling Consulting for 3 years. Long enough to earn respect, long enough to know that today was going to hurt. Victor Sterling stood at the head of the conference table, 42, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, with the kind of confidence that came from never having been genuinely afraid of anything. His dark hair was graying at the temples in that distinguished way magazines always photographed. His tie was perfectly knotted. His cufflinks gleamed. "Let me understand this correctly," Victor said, his voice carrying that particular tone of controlled fury that made assistants scramble and junior associates update their resumes. "You're telling me, in front of the entire senior management team, that you refuse to implement the revised client entertainment policy." The conference room held 7 other people. Miranda from Human Resources sat closest to the door, her expression carefully neutral. 2 senior partners occupied the far end of the table, their faces a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed anticipation, the way people look when they sense blood in the water. 3 junior consultants hunched over their laptops, typing furiously but clearly listening to every word. Miriam's throat felt dry. "Mr. Sterling, I'm not refusing the entire policy. I'm asking for an exemption based on your personal religious convictions," Victor interrupted, practically spitting the words. "Let me be crystal clear, Miss Wade. This is not a church. This is not a Sunday school. This is a consulting firm that bills $400 an hour. When we entertain clients, we do whatever it takes to secure contracts. If that means drinks after work, we drink. If that means certain venues, we go to those venues. I don't care if you spend your Sundays singing hymns and baking casseroles for the elderly. During office hours, you represent this company, not your personal mythology." The words hit like physical blows. Miriam felt heat rising in her cheeks. "I understand the company's position," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm simply requesting that I not be required to attend client events at establishments that conflict with my values. I can still serve clients effectively through breakfast meetings, lunch presentations, afternoon consultations." "Oh, how accommodating of you," Victor said. "How generous. You'll deign to work for us as long as we reshape the entire client relations protocol around your delicate sensibilities." He picked up the policy document from the table, the same one Miriam had been clutching moments before, and held it up for everyone to see. "This document represents months of strategic planning. It represents market research. It represents what our competitors are doing to win the contracts we're losing. And you, a junior consultant with 3 years of experience, think you can just opt out because of a necklace?" He pointed at her cross. The gesture was sharp, accusatory, dismissive. "That little piece of jewelry doesn't give you special privileges, Miss Wade. It doesn't make you better than anyone else in this room. It certainly doesn't allow you to cherry-pick which company policies you'll follow and which ones offend your precious moral standards. Miriam's hand instinctively went to her cross. Her grandmother had given it to her on her deathbed 12 years ago. "Let this remind you who you belong to," she had whispered. "Not what others think, not what the world demands. You belong to something bigger than all of that." "I'm not claiming special privileges," Miriam said quietly. "I'm asking for respect for a sincerely held belief." "Respect?" Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want respect? Then respect the company that pays your salary. Respect the clients who keep this firm running. Respect the fact that your co-workers don't get to pick and choose which policies suit their comfort levels." He turned to the others in the room. "Does anyone else here have a problem with the new entertainment policy? Anyone else need special treatment because of their weekend hobbies?" Silence. Miranda looked down at her notepad. The senior partners shifted uncomfortably. The junior consultants kept typing. "That's what I thought," Victor said. He tossed the policy document onto the table where it landed with a soft thwap. "Here's how this works, Miss Wade. You have until Monday morning to decide if you're part of this team or not. If you can't commit to representing this company in all client-facing capacities, then perhaps you'd be happier at a non-profit. I hear there are plenty of charitable organizations that would appreciate your moral rigor. But if you want to continue working here, you'll implement this policy without exception. No special treatment, no exemptions, no putting your personal comfort above company success." He leaned forward, palms flat on the conference table. "And let me be absolutely clear about something else. Your performance lately has been adequate at best. You missed the deadline on the Riverside account last month. Your client satisfaction scores have been trending downward. You're already on thin ice professionally. This little principled stand of yours, it's not helping your case." Miriam felt the room spinning slightly. The Riverside account deadline had been missed because she had worked 70 hours that week, covering for a colleague whose father had died. The client satisfaction scores had dropped after she had been assigned to a notoriously difficult client who had burned through 3 consultants before her, but saying any of this now would sound like excuses. "I understand," she managed to say. "I hope you do," Victor replied. "Because I'm tired of coddling people who think their personal feelings matter more than results. This is business. Grow up or get out. Meeting adjourned." People began gathering their things. The scrape of chairs against carpet, the rustle of papers, the quiet exodus of people who were grateful they weren't the target. Miriam stood frozen for a moment, then turned and walked out. Her legs felt unsteady. She made it to the hallway, then to the women's restroom. Locked herself in a stall, leaned against the cool metal wall. She didn't cry. She had learned long ago that crying at work was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she pressed her forehead against the wall and breathed slowly. In for 7 counts, hold for 7, out for 7. The breathing technique her grandmother had taught her during anxiety attacks. "You okay in there?" A voice from outside the stall. Miranda from Human Resources. "Fine," Miriam said. "Just needed a moment." "That was rough," Miranda said carefully. "For what it's worth, I think you handled yourself with grace." "Grace?" Miriam repeated softly, almost laughing at the irony. "Didn't feel very graceful." "Victor's been under a lot of pressure lately," Miranda continued. "The board is pushing for better numbers. We lost 3 major contracts this quarter to Westfield Associates. He's scrambling. That doesn't give him the right to—" Miriam stopped herself. "Sorry. I shouldn't put you in an awkward position." "Listen," Miranda said, her voice dropping lower. "Between you and me, you're not wrong to stand up for what you believe. But this is a tough industry. Sometimes we have to compromise more than we'd like. Think about whether this job is worth it." Miriam heard the bathroom door open and close. She was alone again. She emerged from the stall, washed her hands, checked her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked pale, drawn. dark circles under her eyes from too many late nights preparing presentations. Her cross hung against her collarbone, a small, constant weight. The rest of the day passed in a fog. She sat at her desk, stared at her computer screen, accomplished almost nothing. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Word had clearly spread about the confrontation. At 5:30, she gathered her things and headed for the parking garage. Her car was a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when it accelerated. She drove home through Friday evening traffic, the radio off, windows down, despite the chill. She lived in a modest apartment complex 20 minutes from the office. 2 bedrooms because it had been cheaper than a 1-bedroom in a better neighborhood. She used the 2nd bedroom as a prayer space and library. Inside, she dropped her bag on the couch, kicked off her shoes, and stood in the middle of the living room feeling utterly exhausted. Not physically tired, though her body ached. Emotionally spent, spiritually wounded. Her phone buzzed, a text from her friend Bethany. "Still on for coffee tomorrow morning?" She texted back, "Yes, please, I need it." Another buzz. Her younger brother Simon. "How was your day?" She started to type "fine," then deleted it. Instead, "rough, I'll call you tomorrow." Simon replied immediately, "You okay? Want to talk tonight?" "Tomorrow," she typed. "Promise." She made herself a simple dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, ate standing at the kitchen counter, tried to read but couldn't focus, tried to pray, but the words felt hollow, mechanical. She kept replaying the meeting, Victor's pointing finger, his dismissive tone, the way he had reduced her faith to a necklace and weekend hobby. Around 9 o'clock, she finally opened her devotional book. The reading for today was from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 14. "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse." She almost laughed. The timing felt either cruelly ironic or divinely intentional. She wasn't sure which. She read the commentary. True Christian character is revealed not when we're comfortable, but when we're under attack. Anyone can be kind to friends. The radical call of faith is to extend grace to enemies, forgiveness to those who harm us, blessing to those who curse us. This doesn't mean accepting abuse or staying in toxic situations. It means refusing to let bitterness poison our hearts. It means choosing a different path than revenge. Miriam closed the book and sat quietly. Could she bless Victor Sterling, the man who had just publicly humiliated her, mocked her faith, threatened her job? The idea felt impossible, ridiculous even. She decided to take a bath. Hot water, lavender soap, 20 minutes of forced relaxation. She was just drying off when her phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Is this Miriam Wade?" A woman's voice, urgent, slightly breathless. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling from the emergency department. A patient was brought in tonight, and he's been asking for you. He's been quite insistent despite his condition." Miriam's heart lurched. "Who? Is it my brother? My father?" "No, ma'am. The patient's name is Victor Sterling." The world tilted. "I'm sorry, what?" "Mr. Sterling was brought in about an hour ago. He collapsed at his home. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you specifically. He seems quite distressed about reaching you. Are you able to come to the hospital?" Miriam stood in her bathroom, wrapped in a towel, water still dripping from her hair, trying to process this information. Victor Sterling, the man who had eviscerated her in front of colleagues just hours ago. The man whose face she had been trying to banish from her thoughts all evening. That Victor Sterling was in a hospital asking for her. "Miss Wade, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here. What happened to him?" "I can't give specific medical details over the phone, but he's asking for you. Can you come?" Every logical instinct said no. Every wounded part of her said no. Why should she rush to the hospital for someone who had treated her so cruelly? Why should she care? But another voice, quieter, more insistent, said something else. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Miriam heard herself say. She threw on jeans, a sweater, didn't bother with makeup, grabbed her keys and purse. The drive to Mercy General felt surreal, dreamlike. What was she doing? Why was she doing this? She could have stayed home, could have ignored the call, could have let Victor Sterling figure out his own problems, but she couldn't. Something deeper than logic or wounded pride was pulling her forward. The hospital emergency department was bright and sterile and smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. Miriam approached the front desk, gave her name. A nurse with kind eyes and tired shoulders led her down a hallway. "He's in room 7, the nurse said. "Fair warning, he's been pretty agitated. Keep saying your name over and over. The doctors think he might have had a panic attack that triggered the collapse, possibly stress-related. His blood pressure was dangerously elevated when he arrived." The nurse pushed open the door to room 7. Victor Sterling lay in the hospital bed, looking like a completely different person than the powerful executive who had dominated the conference room. His expensive suit had been replaced by a hospital gown. Monitors beeped around him. An IV drip connected to his arm. His face was grey, drawn, much older than his 42 years. His eyes were closed. For a moment Miriam thought he was asleep. She almost turned to leave. Then his eyes opened, locked onto hers, and something broke across his face. "Miriam," he whispered, "you came." She stood awkwardly near the door. "The hospital called. They said you asked for me. I don't understand why—" "I'm sorry," he interrupted, the words tumbling out with desperate urgency. "I'm so sorry. What I said to you today, what I did, I've been lying here for the past hour thinking about it, and I couldn't. I needed you to know. I'm sorry." Miriam blinked. This felt like a fever dream. "Mr. Sterling." "Victor," he said, "please, no more titles, no more pretense." He tried to sit up, winced, fell back against the pillows. "I need to tell you something I've never told anyone at the office." She took a tentative step closer. "You should rest. The doctors—" "My daughter," he said. "I have a daughter, had a daughter, Emily. She died 7 years ago. She was 12. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Miriam found herself moving to the chair beside his bed, sitting down slowly. Victor's eyes were red-rimmed, glassy, with unshed tears. "She was the best thing I ever did. Smart, funny, kind. She loved everyone. And she believed, Miriam. She believed in all of it. Heaven, prayer, forgiveness, the whole thing. She used to wear this little gold cross every single day, never took it off." His voice cracked. He paused, breathing hard. "She got sick. Leukemia. We fought it for 2 years. Best hospitals, best doctors, everything money could buy. I prayed. I actually prayed. Can you believe that? Me. I promised that if she lived, I'd change. I'd be better. I'd believe." He laughed bitterly. "She died on a Tuesday morning. I was holding her hand. Her last words were, 'Don't be sad, Daddy. I'll see you again.' She was comforting me. A 12-year-old child dying of cancer was comforting me." Miriam felt tears stinging her own eyes. "I blamed everything after that," Victor continued. "Blamed the doctors, blamed fate, blamed myself. But mostly, I blamed faith. I blamed every prayer that went unanswered, every promise that turned out to be a lie, every comforting platitude people offered at her funeral. I became hard, cold. I threw myself into work because work was something I could control. Numbers don't lie, contracts don't die. Success doesn't abandon you." He looked at Miriam directly now, his eyes fierce with emotion. "And then today, when I saw you standing there with that cross around your neck, so certain, so convicted, something in me just snapped. All that rage I've been carrying came pouring out. You became everything I hated, every reminder of my daughter, every reminder that I failed to protect her, every reminder that all that faith she had didn't save her." The monitors beeped steadily in the silence that followed. "That's not an excuse," Victor said. "What I did was unforgivable. I humiliated you publicly. I mocked something sacred to you. I threatened your job because of my own broken grief. And I need you to know that I see that now. Lying here tonight, I saw Emily's face. I heard her voice telling me, 'Don't be sad, Daddy.' And I realized I've been sad for 7 years. Worse than sad. I've been poisoned by bitterness." He reached out toward her, not quite touching, his hand trembling in the space between them. "When I collapsed tonight, I was alone in my apartment. As I was falling, all I could think about was your face in that conference room, the way you stood there taking everything I threw at you with such dignity. I thought about Emily, and how disappointed she would be in who I've become. And I needed to see you, I needed to apologize before something happened that made it impossible." Miriam sat very still. Part of her wanted to protect herself, to maintain distance, to remember how much today had hurt. But another part, the part that had driven her here despite every logical reason not to come, was recognizing something true in his confession. "I forgive you," she said softly. Victor's eyes widened. "Just like that?" "Not just like that," Miriam replied. "It still hurts. What you said still echoes. But I forgive you because holding on to this would hurt me more than it would hurt you. And because," she touched her cross gently, "because someone once forgave me for things I didn't deserve to be forgiven for. I'm just trying to pass that forward." Victor's face crumpled, actual tears now sliding down his cheeks. "I don't deserve that." "No," Miriam agreed. "Neither did I. That's kind of the point." They sat in silence for a long moment. Medical equipment hummed and beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone paged a doctor. "Can I tell you about her?" Victor asked suddenly. "About Emily?" "Yes," Miriam said. "I'd like that." So he did. For the next hour, Victor Sterling talked about his daughter, her laugh, her terrible jokes, her obsession with astronomy, the way she used to make elaborate Sunday breakfasts for him, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. The last good day they had together, flying kites in the park 2 weeks before she died. Miriam listened, asked questions, shared a few stories about her own grandmother who had worn the cross she now carried. She didn't try to offer theological explanations or easy comfort. She just listened. Eventually, a doctor came in to check on Victor. His blood pressure had stabilized. The crisis had passed. He would be kept overnight for observation, but was out of danger. "You should go home," Victor said to Miriam. "Get some rest, and thank you for coming, for listening, for not telling me to go to hell, which would have been completely justified." Miriam stood, gathering her purse. "I'll pray for you," she said, "if that's okay." Victor looked at her for a long moment. "Yeah," he said finally. "Yeah, that's okay. Maybe it helps. I don't know anymore, but Emily thought it did, so maybe." Miriam nodded. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Mr. Sterling, Victor, what happened to Emily's cross? The one she always wore?" His face went very still. "I have it. In my office, top drawer of my desk. I look at it sometimes when I'm alone. It's the only thing that makes me feel close to her anymore." "Maybe," Miriam said carefully, "you could wear it instead of hiding it." Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, fear, possibility. "Maybe," he echoed. Miriam drove home through empty streets. It was past midnight. The city looked different at this hour, quieter, somehow more honest. She felt exhausted but strangely lighter. The weight of the day's humiliation had shifted, transformed into something else, not erased but contextualized, redeemed maybe. She thought about Victor's daughter, 12 years old, believing in heaven while dying of cancer, the courage that must have taken, the faith that must have required. She thought about Victor himself, 7 years of grief calcified into cruelty, 7 years of running from pain by inflicting it on others. And tonight, a collapse that forced him to finally face what he had been avoiding. She thought about her grandmother's words, "You belong to something bigger than all of that." Saturday morning arrived, with pale sunlight filtering through her apartment windows. Miriam woke feeling surprisingly rested. She showered, dressed, met Bethany at their usual coffee shop. "You look different," Bethany observed, stirring her latte. Something happened. So Miriam told her everything. The conference room confrontation, the hospital call, Victor's confession. the forgiveness she had offered. Bethany listened, her expression shifting from outrage to surprise to something like wonder. "That's insane," she said finally. "All of that happened in less than 24 hours?" "All of it," Miriam confirmed. "And you actually forgave him after what he did?" "I did." "How?" Bethany asked. "I mean, I know you're supposed to forgive and all that, but how did you actually do it?" Miriam considered the question. "I kept thinking about Emily, his daughter, how she must have suffered but still had faith, and I thought about how much pain Victor has been carrying. Doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it. And I realized that if I held on to my hurt and anger, I'd become just like him, carrying poison, letting it leak out onto other people." "That's incredibly mature," Bethany said. "I would have told him where to shove his apology." "Part of me wanted to," Miriam admitted, "but another part remembered what grace feels like when you receive it, how it changes things. I wanted him to have that." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Victor Sterling. I got your number from HR. I hope that's okay. I wanted you to know they're moving me to a regular room this morning. Also wanted to say again how sorry I am. Take your time thinking about the job situation. Whatever you decide, I'll support it." Miriam showed the text to Bethany. "Well," Bethany said, "at least he's consistent. What are you going to do?" "I honestly don't know," Miriam said. "I need to think about it, pray about it." The weekend passed quietly. Miriam spent Sunday at church, singing hymns, listening to a sermon about the Good Samaritan that felt eerily relevant. She avoided her phone, avoided thinking about work, let herself rest. Monday morning came too quickly. She dressed carefully, her navy blue dress with grey sleeves, sensible flats, her grandmother's cross. Drove to the office, walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the 7th floor. The conference room was empty when she arrived early, before anyone else. She stood in the same spot where she had stood Friday, remembered Victor's pointing finger, his dismissive words, felt the ghost of humiliation, but it was faint now, like a scar that had already started to heal. "Miriam," a voice behind her. She turned. Victor Sterling stood in the doorway. He looked better than he had in the hospital, but still tired, older. He wore a suit similar to the one from Friday, but something was different. Something at his collar, a thin gold chain. A small cross tucked just beneath his tie. "You wore it," Miriam said softly. Victor's hand went unconsciously to his chest. "Yeah, I thought Emily would want me to. And maybe it's time I stopped hiding from what she believed, what she tried to teach me." They stood in silence for a moment. "I talked to the board this weekend," Victor said. "I recommended we revise the client entertainment policy, make accommodations for religious and personal convictions. It won't happen overnight, but I'm pushing for it, and I want you to know that your job is secure, more than secure. I'd like you to consider taking on a leadership role in the policy revision process." Miriam absorbed this. "Why?" "Because you were right," Victor said simply. "Not just about the policy, about holding on to principles even when it's hard, about having the courage to stand up for what you believe. I spent 7 years running from everything Emily tried to teach me. I don't want to run anymore." "Thank you," Miriam said. "That means a lot." Victor nodded. "I'm also going to therapy, finally. And I'm going to visit Emily's grave this weekend. First time in 3 years. I keep avoiding it because it hurts too much. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need to feel it instead of running." "She'd be proud of you," Miriam said. "For trying." "Maybe," Victor said. He smiled, a small, fragile expression. "I'm going to choose to believe that. For now, that's enough." Over the following weeks, things changed at Brennan Sterling Consulting, slowly, quietly, but genuinely. The client entertainment policy was revised to include accommodation clauses. Victor began attending therapy regularly. He and Miriam developed a cautious but genuine friendship built on honesty about pain and the slow work of healing. One afternoon, about a month after the incident, Victor stopped by Miriam's desk. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to his office, opened his desk drawer, and pulled out a photograph. A young girl with dark hair and bright eyes, wearing a gold cross, grinning at the camera with the unself-conscious joy of childhood. "This is Emily," he said, 12 years old, 3 months before she got sick. This was taken at her baptism. She was so happy that day. Miriam studied the photograph. The girl's face was luminous, radiant. "She's beautiful." "She was," Victor said quietly. "And maybe in some way I don't fully understand yet, she still is." He put the photo on his desk, facing outward where he could see it every day. No more hiding in drawers. No more avoiding the pain. "Thank you, Miriam," he said, "for showing up that night, for forgiving me a chance to be better." "Thank you for taking it," she replied. That evening, Miriam sat in her apartment's small prayer room, her devotional book open on her lap. She read again the passage from Romans, "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse." She thought about humiliation transformed into compassion, grief acknowledged instead of weaponized, the strange mathematics of grace where giving it away somehow multiplies it. She thought about Emily Sterling, a 12-year-old girl whose faith had been so strong it reached across 7 years of her father's bitter darkness and finally found light. She thought about her grandmother, who had given her the cross and the reminder, "You belong to something bigger than all of that." And she understood now, more deeply than ever, that belonging meant carrying forward the grace you've been given. It meant showing up when logic says to stay home. It meant forgiving when the wounds are still fresh. It meant believing that transformation is possible, even in the hardest hearts, even in the darkest moments. She touched her cross gently, feeling its familiar weight. Somewhere in the city, Victor Sterling sat in his empty apartment, touching an identical cross beneath his shirt, allowing himself to cry for the first time in 7 years. Allowing himself to remember, allowing himself tentatively to hope. And in the space between their two prayers, something ancient and patient and infinitely compassionate smiled, because this was how it had always worked. Broken people choosing to love anyway. Wounded souls extending grace despite the cost. Humans stumbling toward each other through the darkness because they belonged to something bigger than themselves. The work of redemption was never clean or quick or easy, but it was always possible. And that, more than any policy or position or paycheck, was worth holding on to, even when your hands trembled, even when everyone was watching, even when the cost was high and the outcome uncertain, especially then.